Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've discussed a broad array of threats already this morning, and I agree with the Chairman on the necessity for us to have the information on the cyber front, which is, of course, something that continues to grow every year in terms of a threat to our homeland. We talked about domestic extremists. Certainly that is a threat, as we've said today. I want to focus on the enhanced threat that just occurred in the past month, and that is, again, the way we left Afghanistan in a chaotic, rushed way, and what we've created in the meantime. Director Abizaid, you said in your testimony this morning the U.S. has ended its longest war, and I suppose that's true. But in a way, we haven't, have we? I mean, the war was about terrorism and keeping Afghanistan from being a platform for terrorist attacks against the United States. What we lost a month ago was eyes and ears on the ground and the ability to do just that. We had 2,500 troops there prior to the evacuation. We hadn't had a single casualty, thank God, in 18 months. We had 7,500 NATO troops with us, and we had the ability to do what we do not have now. The best example of that might be what happened tragically with the drone attack, the so-called over-the-horizon alternative that the Biden administration keeps talking about failed miserably, didn't it? And again, not having those eyes and ears on the ground makes it harder for us to protect the homeland. So I guess in a way we ended the longest war, but in another way we've made things more dangerous. Let me ask you about that. You talked about the ISIS-K suicide bombing as an example of a threat. Well, that happened during the evacuation. Again, we hadn't had, thank God, a casualty in 18 months until we lost those 13 brave soldiers, sailors, Marines. You also said in your testimony that the terrorists around the world are, quote, using individuals who have access to the U.S. to conduct attacks. I look at what's going on with the evacuation and us not knowing who's coming to this country, and that's a statement of fact. We just don't know. Having tried my darndest to find out from the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security, it's happening so quickly and was so chaotic, we just don't know. So I'd ask you, Director Abizaid, is our homeland more or less safe following from attack following the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. With respect to Afghanistan, as I mentioned, the terrorist groups that we're most concerned about presenting a threat both in the region but also a future external threat is obviously one, ISIS-K, ISIS Khorasan, and two, Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda's affiliate there. Now, over the years and sustained CT pressure on both groups, principally Al-Qaeda, but given ISIS-K's more recent arrival on the scene, also significant counterterrorism pressure there, has really relegated those two groups to primarily a regional threat. Now, in the wake of our withdrawal, the question is, at what point does that regional threat build to a capability and intent that is focused externally and particularly focused on the homeland? And I would say from an intelligence community perspective, that's one of our highest priorities, which is to monitor and assess the degree to which those groups actually present an external threat.
Well, you've done some monitoring and assessment of it already. I mentioned the Defense Intelligence Agency and CIA have adjusted their projections as to the threat to the homeland, and particularly, Al-Qaeda moving back into Afghanistan. So would you say, again, is our homeland safe or less safe?
So the CIA and DIA assessments that I'm aware of are within the range that we had assessed prior to the drawdown, 1 to 3 years. I think it's fair to say that
well,
we are concerned
they're saying
about,
it's less time now, and they're saying that's a conservative estimate.
I think it is fair to assess that it is that the development of those groups' external operations capability, we've got to monitor and assess whether that's going to happen faster than we had predicted otherwise. Afghanistan is a very dynamic environment right now.
I'll take that as a yes, that we're less safe following the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Director Ray, do you have any comments on that? Do you think we're more or less safe following the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Well, I think I would share most of Director Abizaid's summary, and of course you've cited some of the information you've gotten from our intelligence community partners. Obviously, we are concerned about what the future holds, whether it's the possibility of another safe haven, whether it's the possibility of ISIS-K being able to operate more freely in a less secure environment, whether it's the possibility of events in Afghanistan serving as some kind of catalyst or inspiration for terrorist attacks elsewhere in the region, or potentially with homegrown violent extremists.
Does it concern you that the Haqqani network leader, whose name is Haqqani, is now the acting Secretary of the Interior of Afghanistan?
Certainly concerns me.
He's on your most wanted list, isn't he?
I believe so.
Well, look, the question is, what do we do now? You know, and I hope that we have an enhanced response to the enhanced threat, and not just the kind of feckless drone strike that we saw and tragic drone strike that we saw. With regard to the evacuees, Mr. Secretary, we haven't had a chance to talk yet. I know you tried to reach me, and I appreciate that. And I do think that we've got a real problem here. I mean, the best numbers we have are that very few of the people that have come over are so-called SIVs, meaning the people who actually helped us, who are drivers or interpreters or otherwise assisted the U.S. effort. Secretary Blinken, in his testimony last week, said there are about 20,000 people who had applied for SIV. 708 of them have come through the evacuation, as far as we know. Those are the best numbers we have. In fact, when you look at who's come, not only did we leave American citizens behind, and obviously leave a lot of these SIVs behind who, you know, stood by us, but it looks like there are about 6,500 American citizens who came. That's about 11%. About 3,500 lawful permanent residents. That's just under 6%. There are about 3,000 people with visas, including these SIVs. That's about 5.5%. And the rest, around 75% of the people who came, are called parolees, meaning they don't fit in any of those categories. And we're pushing very hard to get the information. Again, we're desperate to have a classified briefing to be able to get into that, because apparently you can't provide it in an open setting, or maybe just don't have the information. But does that concern you, that 3/4 of the people who we have brought into this country, and by the way, we brought about half the people into America, about 60,000, about 120,000 are still overseas, and we're told that among those people overseas there are even fewer American citizens or permanent green card holders or SIVs. But does it concern you that we don't have in place a way to properly vet and handle these individuals, including allowing these individuals, you know, to walk off the military bases if they choose to do so today?
Ranking Member Portman, first of all, as a preliminary matter, I was disappointed to learn that of your disappointment with respect to the information that you've received, even in the classified context, then I will.
We haven't had a classified briefing yet.
Well, yesterday, I understand the staff did, and I will.
The staff had one, and their report to me, at least, was that they didn't receive anything new that they hadn't already received, including in our phone call yesterday, which was not classified. So the point is, we would just love to get whatever you all need to do to give us the information. We just don't have the information.
And precisely why I wanted to articulate my apology and make sure that we remedy that situation right away.
Thank you.
You're entitled to that information.
Thank you.
So we do have a robust screening and vetting process, in addition to expertise both in the transit countries and here domestically, to ensure the safety and security of the American people. Let me say, with respect to the population of individuals who are not American citizens, lawful permanent residents, or special immigrant visa holders, we also have in that remaining population individuals who applied for special immigrant visas, but whose applications had not yet been completed at the time of the evacuation. We have individuals who have been employed locally in Afghanistan by the United States, who've assisted us in Afghanistan. We have other individuals who qualify for special immigrant visa status, individuals who qualify for P1 or P2 classification of refugees. So it's a very mixed population, and we screen and vet that remaining group as we screen and vet all.
Thank you.
We'll chance to get into this more later, but there's some discrepancy there. But we look forward to talking more.
Senator, I'll note that there